Go on and call this meeting to order at 6:01 p.m. I'd like to welcome you all, and at this time, we will stand for a moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We need a motion for the adoption of the agenda. You want to review, but nothing can be changed, only stuff can be taken off.
I'm making a motion to approve the agenda as written.
I'll second.
It's a motion by Ms. Hall, second by Mr. Kaiser. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries 4-0. Public comments, I don't think there is any here.
Looks like people signed in but scratched out.
Okay.
No.
All right. We are on to the finance update. Ms. Ellis, consider approval of tentative budget for 2024-2025 school year.
Right, so, yes, they are the same things. All right, so we're going to talk lots of numbers tonight. This is my cup of tea. Okay. So tentative budget, we are at the kind of middle piece of our budget, but this is what we will start the school year with. And it is required that we submit to KDE by May 30th a tentative budget. So again, we are kind of at a snapshot moment. We still don't have all the complete knowns. We're making assumptions at this point. But just a reminder, this is all the funds that we operate within in a district, and so I've kind of laid those out for you to know what they are. So if we do a summary of all of those funds that were just listed, we are looking at a total budget of $77.7 million between all the different funds. Are there any specific questions that you all want to ask before we jump into each individual fund? Okay. Should not have stapled my papers. It's pretty hard to do that. Okay, so assumptions that we're going to make on the general fund. And the general fund is the fund that is where our property tax dollars go, our SEEK dollars for our student attendance. That is the bulk of where that funds general fund. Other items that go into that are our interest that we earn on our cash sitting in the bank. Also, a good chunk of money is federal dollars from our Medicaid billing. So that's really the basis of general fund. So in this budget cycle right now that we're talking about, we're making the assumption that we're going to take the compensating rate so that you can see what that looks like if we keep our revenue stream exactly the same as we have operated this year. We are required to do the payroll steps, which on our budget is approximately a 1% increase. We are also using the allocations that were presented, the SBDM allocations for our schools in April that the board approved. And then we're still having that $2.35 million set aside for rotations of things that may need to be completed throughout the school year of items that might come up, such as roof maintenance, furniture, that type of stuff. This is how we replaced all of our playgrounds over the last year. Okay.
So can I ask a
Yes,
question
ma'am.
about the allocate? So for like the Innovation Center, so that staffing, since I had asked you earlier and you said that there's no allocation, so how do we know, where are they included at in the budget?
So they're included in the same area that allocations are. They just don't have specific ratio numbers such as the SBDM councils.
Okay.
So we are dictated by KRS that tells us classroom ratios if you're an SBDM school, which is all of our schools except for Cardinal Innovation Center and preschool. Preschool is bound by a different set of ratios based on grant funding with the CARA funding and Head Start. And then CIC kind of has a unique situation with how they are staffed ratio.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Okay, so we try to keep a very conservative budget. We are estimating beginning balance a little over 9 million. We're saying you can see working budget that we are in right now. You see the tax dollars, that number is exactly the same because we're saying that we're gonna take compensating in this budget, which would produce the exact same amount of revenue we are operating on right now. You will see fluctuations in our SEEK is the primary area that goes up, and that is based on legislation decisions that have been made to increase the per pupil amount, fund transportation at a higher percentage. So it's calculations within that SEEK formula that has changed that. Any questions before? It's really high overview of revenues.
Alicia, when you say compensating rate,
Yes, ma'am.
can you explain that so that?
Yes, so the compensating rate is something that when we finalize our school year this year, and we report our numbers to the state of what we actually earned in all of our taxes, they will take that number against the property values that are submitted by the PBA office, and they will produce a rate that they call the compensating rate that will cause us to earn the exact same amount of money we collected this year. So it makes us even. We don't increase our revenue at all. So it's going to drop our tax rate to whatever would make us be compensating to what we had this year. Is how that works. Okay. All right. So with the assumptions we have made on staffing and only doing a step raise, this is how our salaries and benefits have fallen out. We have met with every single principal, every single director, and hashed through their budgets, looking at historical spends, initiatives for next year, and we cut the budget as much as we could possibly cut it on the operations side, which is literally about 15%. That's not a whole lot to operate our district on. Our salaries are right at 85% of our budget. And that puts us with a contingency of 4.9, leaving us at 7.6%. Again, required by law to have a 2% contingency. Accounting best practices is more like 10, so we're kind of in a good sweet spot at the 7.6. This is a comfortable spot to make sure we can cover any emergency situations that may occur. Any questions in this overview specifically? Okay. So the way that falls out, because when we say excess and deficiency of funds, we do not look at what we're rolling into this school year. We are looking at simply what we are going to collect next school year and what we are planning to spend out, okay? So that's no contingency, that's no beginning balance, it's literally the in and outs of just that year, okay? So when you peel off beginning balance, we're at 49.8. When you peel off contingency, we're at 54.1. We are in a deficiency of 4.3 million. So some considerations to that are that set aside. We have that 2.35 million set aside that is not necessarily guaranteed we're going to spend that. We're setting it aside for emergency situations, but we can kind of peel that back off and say that's a one-time expenditure type thing that's not reoccurring. So we're going to take that back off. We also have about 2.2 million in what is being carried over from the schools between their Section 6 monies and some grants that we had to kind of flip into general fund to spend by a certain deadline percentage. And so when you take that back out, because again, that would be a one-time expenditure next year, we're looking at an excess of $270,000. So we have done everything we can possibly do that if the board chooses to take the compensating rate, we have met our requirements and we have trimmed our budget back to still be sufficiently budgeted for a year, okay? This is kind of just another summary of the contingency. Good question that Mr. Kaiser asked for is why is food service in there? Well, the KRS that calculates the percentage and tells you how to do that for contingency makes you include food service because that is an operational program that we have to have and we must cover it. So if they cannot cover themselves, general fund has to cover it. So that's part of our contingency, is making sure that that fund is covered. All right, so I just went through a lot of information very quickly. Any questions before we move into some considerations we want to talk about with the budget? Any clarifications needed? Okay, so things that we would like the board to consider is taking the 4% revenue increase. And this is revenue increase. We're not talking tax rates right now. We're talking about our revenue on our budget. So by law, we can take the 4% revenue increase without any recall or voter being voted on by the public. And that will produce, estimating if we collect everything in our budget that we have budgeted for this year, if we say 4% added to that, that's an additional $866,000 on our budget next year, okay? So, one thing I want to make clear is when we start getting into the rate conversation, 4% is not the rate. 4% is our revenue, okay? That's what the district would benefit from whatever the taxes would be, okay? So the rate, in all reality, as we saw in the current year we're sitting in, as we're seeing PVA values go up, our rate's actually going down, even though we're still taking that max rate that we are allowed by the state to take. And additionally, the county is observed and reevaluated within quadrants, so that's fourths. So we're gonna say only the fourth of the county that's being reevaluated is most likely going to see an increase in their property values. The other 3/4, being that if property values overall go up and our rate goes down, they're actually going to see a decrease in their taxes. Now this is assumptions, this is not reality. I'm not saying that that is what is going to happen, but that's a very good scenario of what could happen come August, okay? So what this allows us to do though is look at possible salary increases, because as you saw with how we said if we take the compensating rate, our only excess is about $240,000. That is not a sufficient cushion of revenue on a reoccurring budget to give a raise. It's not possible. So if that is a consideration that we would like to make, I've laid out a couple options, anywhere from a 1% to a 2%. And I've broken that down between classified and certified staff. And just to clarify, certified staff is our teaching staff. Those are the ones who hold certificates of I don't know the best way to say it. They hold certificates, so they are certified. Everyone else is considered classified. If you don't hold that teaching certificate, you're classified. But also, we have salary folks and hourly folks. So I've also kind of given an option for our hourly staff, because a percent raise to them is not equivalent to like a percent raise to someone who has a salary. So it's a different concept there. So I gave a couple options. But what this looks like, if we do these proposed raises, what this looks like to the staff. So the prior slide showed you what it looks like to our budget. This is kind of what it would result into the staff. So if you did a 1 or a 2 on the salary tables. So we're talking the salary tables presented as is, if we raise them a certain percentage or a certain dollar cent amount, what it would look like to our staff is more, just an example, if you did a 2% raise to certified, it would be more of a 2.5 to a 7% raise depending on where they fall on the step schedule. Okay, and then same thing with classified staff, the hourly rate extra. Questions or discussion here?
So there's a certain, can you explain the annual step? Like there's a
Yes.
required?
Yes, so we in the past, over the past 3 years have completely rebuilt all of our salary tables. So everyone on our salary table is anywhere from a 0.5% to a 1% or higher, depending on if you hit a certain level. And those levels are at year 10 and year 20. So everyone is consistently getting a step. Majority of our staff gets a 1%. If you hit year 10, it's 5%. If you hit year 20, it's 10%. Or, I'm sorry, 8%. Numbers, lots of numbers. But, so in looking at that, it is guaranteed that most of our staff will get a 1%. Regardless if the board chooses to increase the salary tables as a whole, that annual step increase is a 1%. The only ones who are at a 0.5% is, as last year we extended the table from 27 years to 30 years. And the amount of money for that level of experience, it was a lot to do 1% on our budget. We did not have enough, so we did half steps. So there are half step increments as our 27 to year 30. So everyone will get some sort of raise with their step. It's just a question of what can our budget handle if we want to give more of to assist them with cost of living and inflation that they are dealing with, but yet we are also dealing with those same situations. Well, we have to raise our revenue. We're trying to help raise their household revenue. We also have to raise our business revenue.
Thank you. I did understand that. I just want, if somebody's listening, for them to understand it, because it is very complicated and it takes a lot to wrap my social work brain around these numbers. But I just wanted, I think that that's important to know. So there is one piece within what we decide will also potentially, help out.
So looking at these numbers, where would you feel most comfortable with us being? I know I always, you want me to ask that?
I'll let
Mr.
Mr.
Howard.
Howard answer
Yeah.
that, but we've discussed it.
No, so I think if you were asking me for a recommendation, I think
That's what
that,
I'm asking.
we need to compete with other districts and give raises. The way we win in the classroom is put the best, most highly qualified teachers in front of our kids. And not only put them there, but keep them there so that they don't drift somewhere else. Alicia and I've had several conversations, and I would recommend that we max out our revenue at 866. I would love to give us the certified teachers a 2% raise. And then I would probably recommend with your hourly employees looking at the 85 cents an hour raise, because ultimately that's going to pan out to them to be at least $1 on the hour raise. And we can say confidently that we believe in our classified staff with so much, we're going to give them $1 an hour more. And that doesn't happen very often if you work hourly rates. And I think it will max out that 866, but I feel comfortable given that we're rolling over 270,000 also. So that would be my recommendation, because I think it's the most that we can do, and I think our staff deserve it.
Thank you. Sorry, I hate putting you all on the spot like that. But in the same sense, you deal with the numbers and you
No, and it's
every
easy
day.
math. I mean, if our revenue stays the same, we don't have money to raise it. If we increase our revenue, then whatever we increase it by, that's the number we have. And then you subtract how much raises cost. I mean, that's why we set up the slide that way, because it's very transparent.
Right.
When people ask where our money going, it's going to raises for our staff, because inflation impacts our district and our district budget, but it impacts our households. And we've also looked at comparisons, which I think we sent to you guys, on how much costs were with electric and water and
Just
supplies over the past couple of years, and we're up $660,000 in costs. That we've cut, and we're living within our means. So I also want the public to understand that we've been very mindful and can run it. We just can't run it. And at my fear, the cost of losing staff.
So if we do the 85 cents and the 4%, do the 4%, get 2% teachers, 85 cents an hour, then that still will make us have to go into a little bit of the other monies.
Correct.
Right? But not near as deep.
Correct. It puts us at like 991, so 130, so about half of the rollover, and still being we're in the positive
On the
on the rollover, without touching contingency or our committed monies of 2.3 plus million.
If we decided to not give raises except for the step raises and give a bonus, then you'd take that straight out of our contingency fund, couldn't we?
It depends on, so there's two different questions in that. One, you have to increase your revenue, yes, or it would come out of your contingency, which is not sustainable. If you did your 4% revenue increase you still have that 866 to work with. It would just mean, how big of a bonus we're talking. Easy math, if you gave a $500 bonus, it's gonna cost the district almost $300,000. $1,000 gonna be over 600,000, weighing into then what you do with your certified teachers, we're way over, 1.2 million. It's just math.
Now, it's my understanding with bonuses, aren't they taxed differently and you might not get as much?
So they are taxed at a pretty high rate, but they also don't count towards the classified staff's retirement. So it doesn't go towards,
Or certified.
Or
not towards
certified.
anyone's. It's treated like an extra service essentially. So it's
so like I
not
said, the
counted
board does
towards
have
your
that option,
salary.
yes ma'am, it just really depends on.
It can't even be called a bonus, can it?
I mean, you can, but you have to establish it at the beginning of the year instead of like mid-year.
I
Like,
know there
we
was
need
a
to
whole
just
bit.
establish it
Yeah.
within the salary tables. We
Because you
basically
can't
have
back
to.
pay it either, so.
We can't back pay it, we can't give it for services not rendered yet, like there's a lot of stipulations, we have to actually submit letters to the retirements and say, hey, we wanna give a bonus. So it's not that it's not doable, there's just a lot of red tape to make it happen. As opposed to increasing salary tables, it's much easier. Just from my end of payroll.
I had just been talking to some employees, and that's at 3 different schools, and that's kind of what they had said they would choose. So I just want to throw that out there.
I'm surprised, because when we did that before, they got really upset about being taxed so much.
When you give a
Well,
big
you're
lump
right,
sum,
taxes.
it takes out a lot of taxes.
Yeah, because they ended up not getting near what they thought they were gonna get, and it caused some,
We had a lot of calls and payroll.
yeah.
Well, you need to give at least a $900 to $1,000 bonus.
We did,
Yeah, I know, I was there, I was working at the
and
time,
they
but,
still got
yeah, we were
taxed.
always overjoyed with it. I was surprised.
Oh, no, there was a bunch of,
Because out of 900, you got like 700. So that was a good bonus.
well, it depends on how your taxes, I mean, that would
That
depend
was
on
for
your
profit.
household too, like, right? If you're
Yeah,
claiming
it's-
zero or claiming,
Right, it depends on your tax elections.
Yes.
Yeah, I was a 0%. But I just want to throw that out there. I was hoping maybe, tax rate, maybe we could do 3% tax, and then just do a bonus this year, and maybe go back up next year, and then do raises.
It is a consideration the board could vote on. Okay, so we don't have to make a decision right this minute in this PowerPoint presentation of the budget, but those are considerations that we to think about when we get to the salary tables. So Fund 2 is our special revenue or all of our grants. So this is a summary of current year to next year. I do not book a grant until I have official notice that it has been given to us. So, I mean, we have a lot of assumptions and thoughts that we're gonna get grants, but we don't know final numbers yet, so they are not in this budget yet. All of those will show up when it comes to our working budget. So this is just quick run through. Fund 22 is our district activities, and that's basically anything operational at the school level. And Fund 25, school activities, is our student-based. So any clubs, athletics, field trips, fees that we collect, fundraisers go into this. We do not put budgets in the system until money is actually collected. Fund 310 is our capital outlay, and it is based on ADA at $100. So with the assumption of $4,675, we have $467,000 in this account. 320 is our building fund, so this is based on our nickels that we have. We have 2 nickels adopted and matched by the state. Just kind of bring your attention to the fact that our growth nickel will actually sunset in 2031, so that will affect bonding capacity greatly at that point, and our
It's already,
construction funds,
it's already
building funds.
impacting it.
Yes, I mean, it is already impacting it because bonds are 20 years out, so 2021 is less than 20 years, so it's already falling off of our bond schedules and the way they project our revenues for us to pay out. And basically, we have less and less capital money. So that's kind of an issue we're dealing with. But basically, this is our primary budget where we pay all of our bonds, where we have built our buildings. And then anything additional, which we just talked about it at the May meeting on Tuesday night, was that capital funds request comes from these two funds.
So this is the second time we've talked about this growth nickel. Do we as a board need to start thinking about talking about it, doing something about it?
So I think the best thing, and we're coming with a strategy, that we're trying to work with our state legislature, and specifically our two representatives, and Senator Elkins and Representative Dotson, because the legislature can change that. We're one of only 15 districts that's in this situation. Every other nickel in the state of Kentucky is equalized or matched.
Okay.
But for some reason, when we got this one, it was set up differently.
Okay,
So I think anytime you can have conversations with either one of those two gentlemen,
perfect.
because that would increase if we can get it matched, you're basically adding $260,000 per year of revenue that you can bond out 20 years. So we would go from $17 million that we can bond to almost a little less than 40.
It's a huge.
It's significant. So I'm working on that currently. And so any work that we can do with those folks would be greatly helpful. I'm also working with RJ and Mr. Palmer, and Compass as our fiscal advisor, so I think they're having some conversations too.
Perfect.
It's a great question.
All right, Fund 400 is debt service that we just talked about, that the capital funds primarily pay. So these are all of our bonds in existence right now that we are paying on. And that's 4.9 on our budget. So that is just a summary of that 4.9 and the capital funds we expect to bring in. And we are estimating a little over 1.1 million that we could do a capital funds request on next year. So this year was 1.4 when everything fell out of what we had just requested. And that's what we're using for those summer projects for our properties and operations. Okay, so Fund 51 is our school nutrition. So assumptions on her budget is she has a decreasing beginning balance, and this is due to they are required to keep a certain number of months of operating expenses, and they are not allowed to go over that because they are not a for-profit company. They are a nonprofit organization along with us, and they cannot make profit. So they bound them to certain numbers. So she has been working on a spend down plan from this last beginning balance, and she has spent about half of her beginning balance. So, I mean, she's bought a lot of equipment that was needed for her cafes, and so she is doing exactly what Katie told her to do. But that will in turn make her beginning balance lower. So that is kind of the decrease you're going to see in her budget in a minute. We're also still being very conservative on revenues, although she's doing very well. We still just kind of be as conservative as we can to not overestimate. And then we have already planned within her budget, because again, they're their own business per se, that we are going to increase the hourly rate of our school nutrition staff by 4%. So that is already built into her budget. It will happen regardless of the raise that the board decides on, they will get a 4%.
Will they get a 4% even above if,
No,
okay.
her budget would not be able to sustain that, so her budget is a 4%.
Okay.
And the revenue increase, none of that goes into her budget.
Okay.
Correct.
So that's the difference.
Yeah, they're a standalone fund and operate on their own. So this is kind of a scenario of her revenues. So again, why she's gone down a little bit is really mainly the beginning balance. And then this has the projection of her raise in there. She has shifted some staff around, so you can see from draft to tentative. It actually went down a little bit, but she has consolidated some positions to accommodate that 4% raise for her staff. So that's
Is
strategy within her budget.
In the federal revenue, is there any chance of her losing any grants or any, have we heard anything about that?
We do not suspect that will happen in the nutrition area. They are actually funded by the USDA, not the Department of Education. So they are funded by a different department at the federal level. Although it funnels through our Department of Education at the state level, from the federal level it is not.
Okay.
the Department of Education, mayor.
Yeah,
the
so
department.
I heard you say it comes from a different federal level, it comes to the
Yes.
state, and comes to the state, the Department of Education to the state, not the federal.
Correct, correct. It's from USDA at the federal level. So the Department of Agriculture, I guess I should not say the acronym. So our new venture this year was our child care program. So we are expanding all the time. We have a wait list. This has been a very good program that we have implemented here in Clark County. It's had a lot of growing pains, anything new, but we're working through it, and it's gotten a lot of positivity for our staff as a benefit, and so we're going to continue that. And I did not put numbers to a slide for you on this, just because we are still tentatively with how many kids we have and revenues. It's really a hard pinpoint thing at this moment, but we did, just so that new board members know, we went into this venture knowing it would cost us money because it was an employee benefit. It was a recruitment and retainment. So it is costing the general fund. That's in our transfer expenditures a little bit. It is less this year than the current year we're in. It'll be less next year. We're only talking about maybe $100,000 in the budget next year, whereas this year it's more like $300,000. So adding that aftercare program really has helped fund this program. Okay. So future considerations that we don't have pinpointed right now that could change the budget. Whatever our final ADA is that we report on our SARS report to the state is what will really determine that SEEK funding next year. Anything that we might have to adjust staffing wise based on enrollment, if we have to add teachers because of that, that would add SEEK funding, big calculation. So there, things could change within that. Any legislation decisions that might come up, that changes. Actual PBA numbers, what the board ends up voting on for our tax rate, any new grants we get might allow us to not spend things we had budgeted on general fund if we get a grant to cover it. So things like that.
Can you tell us what AADA stands for?
Average
Actual-
daily attendance. What's the first
daily
day?
attendance.
I was called ADA, I'm not sure where that comes from.
It's daily attendance.
Daily.
It's average daily attendance, but the A is average.
Actual average?
Actual average.
Even though that.
Annual.
Annual.
My bad. I was like,
Okay.
what's the first day?
Annual average.
And we love our acronyms, and sometimes it's hard to remember what they are. Annual average daily attendance. So the SAR report, which is the superintendent's report, gets reported, and it does for the whole year, annually, the average.
We monitor it every single day, it just takes the yearly,
Yes.
which is, it makes it annually.
Thank you for that question. And
So
sorry, I didn't know the answer. I was
Which is
told.
why attendance matters. So it's not
Yes.
just about how many kids you have enrolled, it's actually the percentage of kids that attend school for the year.
So
How the
we
year
are
goes
not
on.
funded on enrollment. We are funded on attendance. And it makes a difference. But again, that's a legislation thing out there. They're talking about membership, and so legislation can flip a lot of assumptions on their head.
And you're talking about state legislation.
Yes,
Right.
state legislation.
Not
Yes, ma'am.
necessarily federal. I don't.
Correct.
There's
Yes.
not a lot. They're not going to open up those regulations.
No, I don't think so at the federal level. Okay, so next steps, we're going to close the year on June 30th. We'll start July 1 with this budget that we just talked about. I have to submit my actual final numbers by July 25th to the state. And then Ms. Brady has to submit the property values on her end. And when both of those have been submitted, within 3 days of both of those being certified by KDE, we will get our tax rate reports. Typically, that's about the first or second week of August. And then we can start having our discussion on tax rates. We have 45 days from when we get those tax rates to make a decision. And then we will do this budget thing all over again in September. With more information.
Thank you for making things clear. It's very helpful.
You're very welcome.
Does anybody have any more questions for Ms. Ellis? No? No, would anybody like to make a motion to approval of the tentative budget?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Mr. Kaiser,
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Hall. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Yes, I oppose.
All right, motion carries 4-1. With Kaz, do you have that, or do you need me to read them out to you? Got it, okay. All right. Consider approval of the 2025-2026 school activity budget.
So one of the activities that we must complete for Red Book is to create budgets for that Fund 25 that we talked about, our student activities. So these are the school's budgets. Again, like I said, we only budget once the monies are actually collected, but this is a required element of Red Book. So, and it says that board must approve it. So if you would please approve these, that we are compliant with Red Book.
Need a, consider approval of 2025-2026 school activity budget. Do I need to do each one of those individually, or just, I can do them all at once? Okay.
I make a motion to approve.
Motion by Ms. Hall.
I'll second
All right,
I need
second.
to report to the auditors that we turn them in and the board approve them.
Okay.
So one line is good.
All right. Second by Ms. Thomas. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. All right. Consider approval of salary tables for the 2025-2026.
So the tables that have been presented to you are the exact same tables for this year, because we haven't made a decision, and it's a lot of work to do assumptions. So I wanted to not create a million versions and confuse anyone. So this is with the step raise that we just approved in our tentative budget. They can look at, what level they'd be on and know what they would make next year for the step raise. But the considerations that we talked about in the tentative budget, those two slides, like that's where we're at in deciding in adoption of the tables, what we're gonna do for certified and classified staff.
I make a motion to do a cost increase to the 2% cost increase to the salary tables for the classified and certified staff.
So just do 2% across the
We're gonna do
board.
an across the board 2% raise.
What, I'm just going by this slide.
Okay, well,
So the slide is to break down between, so if you did a 2% for everybody, it's $752,000 on our budget. So I had broken it down to classified or certified with
Or
that,
you
so you
could
can
do it
see the
higher,
different
right.
cost breakdowns. If you wanted to do kind of a multi type of raise.
So I'm trying to make a motion to do the 4% revenue increase for the 866,000.
So we can say we would increase our budget for that, but as far as salary tail
Salaries
goes,
is
that
a bit
decision
different.
is not there yet. That's when we go to do the tax rates in August. But
So
it
all we
does
can
kind
do-
of commit the board if you do a raise.
yeah, so if we say 2%
And the,
of the certified
and
and
85
85
cents,
cents on the classified,
it takes you to that 991.
that takes us to the 991.
That's what I'm trying to say,
Yes.
what Mr. Kaiser just eloquently stated. Thank
Okay,
you.
You're right.
so your motion is, let me make sure I got this right, that you make a motion to do the certified 2%
Yes,
and classified at 85 cents,
yes.
and then that will make it a total of 991,000. Is that the right number?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll
Yes.
second.
All right, motion by Ms. Hall. Second by Mr. Kaiser. And all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And I oppose.
Okay, motion, didn't give me a chance, Ms. Hall. Motion carries 4-1. Okay. Consider approval of payroll calendar for 2025-2026.
So this is just kind of a housekeeping thing that we need to approve these dates so we can move forward to start the new school year with when paychecks will come out and all those good things.
I make a motion to approve the payroll calendar for the 2025-2026 school year.
Motion by Ms. Hall,
I'll second.
second by Mr. Dorsey. Forgot your name for a minute. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis.
Thank you.
All right, with that being said, I need a motion to adjourn to closed session.
So moved.
Oh, okay. Motion by Mr. Dorsey. Do I need to read all that, Becky?
Okay.
I think it's okay.
Okay. Who second? Sorry.
I did,
Okay, second by Mr. Kaiser.
but I need to time it.
We're gonna take a 5-minute break.
Thank you.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries 5-0.
I'm sorry, no?
Already